If Ivan would be here now, he would just sit there, making himself heard or visible, while at the same time disappearing in a way. He appeared, was definitely an appearance, and at the same time so unobtrusive, so gentle, so just there, entering into the conversation and so on and so on. He never made like, you sit there, okay? No.
Let's talk. Yeah.
No. Yeah, he was always studying. Always. Yes. Very learned, very serious and joyful way. Yes.
What I was wanting to understand or to hear from you is how your personal questions about women and the body were somehow also influenced by this group that were thinking together, you, Ludov, Illich, how your own questions found a place or an influence by a contribution given by Illich.
Now, first, of course, Ivan was very critical of the feminist movement in this time period, and was making his jokes about women in this sense. And in a sense, we met outside of these preconceived spheres or areas, or where you go and Ivan Illich is giving a talk, I better go there and listen what he's going to tell us, and so on. And I didn't meet him in a set circumstance or scene or something. No. Yeah, he. I think that was in Bremen. He came to Bremen. How an issue, a topic, a question, or just an aha. Body. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
How this comes up, because then body was no topic among scientists, or only in the neurosciences and so on, but not in the historical sciences. I was working as a historian and also teaching as a historian, but people do have, I don't know, do we have a body, or that they are there, how you sit there, my dear, is you, that this was not an issue. Body was like a blank space, I would say, in the vocabulary of the social sciences, because it was either medicine or it was the historical sciences, but then they didn't touch on anything that's body, or body then is physis, and what means physis, and then you can go historically back, but body was not a notion, a topic then in the historical sciences. It wasn't an issue. Say, I had studied history and worked as a historian, but it never came to me that the physis, the body, would raise a historical question, or would raise historical questions, because we thought body was always there. It's like belongs to the physical sciences or the natural sciences, and it didn't come to us that the notion that we think about the body, and especially as a when you then 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when you mention body, then you think of the medicine, medical sciences, and then there are no questions, because medical science had the authoritative definition of what would be what would be issues to raise and to discuss. Yeah. It was a discovery, really a discovery that body. When we discuss body, then we think of medicine, we think of the laboratory, we think of the history of a certain terminology, discussing or speaking body, but it didn't come to us then that the say radical monopoly, the way that how body was discussed in the 1960s, 1970s, that the power of medicine to define everything that is related to the physics, the body, or what we thought the physics, the body, we didn't even know how to raise questions, because it was like, what do you say? A radical monopoly means, in the terms of Ivan, that a certain science, here medicine, not even dictated, but had the power to define what there was to be discussed and what you would want to know, because that has to do with the power of the academic disciplines, that they have the power to define what it is all about. And body wasn't a term in the social sciences; it just didn't appear. Yeah, because we thought, okay, that was then medicine and neurological sciences and so on. Yeah. And that the body ultimately would raise issues about the self, the I, the relation to yourself or to your next, and so on. That this was all were discoveries. But body was no term when you then in the 1970s, when you discuss body, so then you go to the neurosciences or you go to medicine.
Yes.
Medicine was defining what there was to know about it. Yes. And you came to medicine, and then medicine, of course, in the natural sciences, is a discipline of truth-telling. That's the only way to seriously, academically talk about it. And so we started thinking, but there are other issues. So what's the self, the I, the you, and so on, in which to raise the issue of not the body, but the self, the other, the you, the I, and so on and so on. So the history of the subject and subjectivity or subjectivities. He had done medical nemesis, and he was in good contact with the American feminists who were pressing for the history of medicine, and and so it was only in the conversation there that he realized that the term in itself would not body would not, in a sense, didn't exist, or would not refer to an object that was eternally or universally generally given, but that was discovered in these years, in the 1970s, 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
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 Yeah. And I remember Ivan came, and he was friends to American feminists who were arguing about the monopoly of medicine, defining the medicine then. Of course, it's not a universal term, but medicine then, defining the body that was and defining the body generally, and then arguing that this would be for once and for all the truth about it. That was all that we should know about it, or can know about it, or would know about it, and so on. And so I think what was interesting was that with the term body, what we were discovering was the history hidden behind the usages or parlance or notions given behind these terms, because the body then was almost a term of the natural sciences, because they were once and for all were given, and then so we started asking about, but how were they given, and the history of.
Is this when you start reading the perception of women, of their own body, told to a physician?
Yes.
Is
yes.
this the moment,
yes.
Baba?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I worked as a historian then, and run into so-called medical case histories. That is before the 18th century. In any encounter of a physician with a patient, it's always storytelling, because there was no body the physician would have defined once and for all. Physician as a discipline would have defined once and for all. It was important to go back behind that watershed in which medicine then became acquired the monopoly to define body. Because when we went back, so I was lucky to run into the protocols of a local physician near Eisenach, Jena, and he had written in 8 thick volumes. He had written down what the ladies in his practice had reported him, and it was, as historians we speak about sources, so a source. So I thought, what are they talking about? And I realized right away that whatever they talked about the body then, in the first decades of the 18th century, that's the time of Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, that they reported to their physician about perceptions beneath the skin that I, for myself, had never experienced. If I had a nosebleed once, so the nosebleed would stop again. So what is it all about it? And while a bleeding in 1720, maybe it will never stop. Why should it stop? and so on. And so that was to discover that the stories are fed through experiences that 200 years later or 300 years later we take for natural, but before they weren't. What they reported was were very different stories. Yeah, and it all revolved around blood, the movement of blood, interior blood, the fullness and sickness or scarcity of blood, and so on and so on. So I was then near Göttingen in the library, 18th century, 17th century library, working, and I was reading these sources of a local physician. I got very interested in in the lived experiences or the narratives about perceptions, interior perceptions that 100 years later are just gone from medical sources because they have been redefined and no one took it. No serious physician would report and write down case stories about blood, evanescence of blood, and so on.
Just to see if I understood you correctly.
Yes.
The moment in which it's no longer the inner perception or the interior perception of a woman, for example, talking and telling a story about what she's feeling to a physician. The transition in which there's something beneath the skin, as you said, that was not referred to as the body. Later, with the medicine having the monopoly over the terminology, but also over the perception, creates defines what you should feel, or
what you defines how you may perceive what you see. Of course, there were lots of histories about menstruation, the history of menstruation, the description of menstruation, the 16th century, 17th century, and so on, but also in antiquity, and disputes and discussions about what this was. The important discovery for me was that I realized, this is before or beyond any standardized body. Yeah, this is not. These are stories that are experienced in a different cosmos.
Is this what you call disembodying?
Yeah, the issue is when you read as a historian, and of course we are dealing with sources, and when you have when you are investigating, say the perception of blood, the living blood, the interior bloody movement, and so on. So you can go and find out in dictionaries how they define it. But the issue was to understand that this were narraciones, stories about a self-perception, the perception of the self, about interior movements that later weren't part of medicine's knowledge in the sense of scholarly knowledge, because they weren't interested in this any longer. Yeah, that's only 17th century, in the Baroque age, in which Yeah, all this blood. Yeah.
And Barbara, it's possible to see the watershed as you
Yes.
told. It's a clear watershed of this change in perception, or it's like little by little things were. How is this? How you saw then this transitioning happening?
Now, this you raise the question how new a new terminology or a new way of perceiving comes into being and
Yeah.
is accepted in the academic discipline.
What was this turning point? If you saw this turning point happening little by little, starting where? This turning point of from perception to
Okay, the sources I was working with were the daily protocols of a country physician in a small town, Eisenach, and the source the source starts on 8th of April 1995 in September. It was a very cold September. It was unfortunately very, very cold. And a widow comes to me and she complains that even, she's having too much blood. She's bleeding too much. But a widow with 60-year-old doesn't have monthly emanations of blood, of course. So the physician would send her today, if she comes and complains about that, the physician would send her to a psychiatrist who would then deal with some strange ideas that she had. But these were not strange ideas, but she was reporting that this was what she experienced. So you gradually in reading you understand what they experience is way other than what I myself experienced. So what I was doing then was reading these sources not against the background of a biological or physical body given for since antiquity always the same, but the historicity of these accounts, that they report about something that obviously has a history but if something is perceived as that it has a history, there must be people who get interested in it and don't start when you talk about body physics, a standard one that since antiquity is the same, but the historicity of narrations.
There is a moment in which Illich Ivan starts talking about the flesh. Do you think that in Ivan's writings there is a difference between body and flesh?
Ivan didn't have the slightest idea that he had started to enter into a domain that was obviously very different than the domain he was discussing when he discussed medical nemesis. He didn't realize that that was not a history of medicine he had entered, but a history of the deep transformation of what this lady experiences as real in a certain time. Yeah. So yes. So you know, perhaps as a historian or something that in order to perceive something new, you have to get distance from that is vanishing, and to be open for the surprise that you say, what is this lady? What is she talking about? And when she talks about blood, too much blood, and the blood is racing to her head, and the blood comes out from her eyes, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on here? Yeah. So 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 so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The decisive moment for me, I think, and also with the help of Ivan was, or the discussions with Ivan was, that what I was encountering in reading so many personal narrations, uh, that is medical stories, medical storytelling, what these ladies discuss and say, yes, and the blood is coming out from here, and regularly, once a month, comes out here. But you know, today, if blood comes out at your, when something is wrong, she should go either to the in the lunatic asylum, or to a physician or whatever.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes.
so to come to the deep question of what is the stuff of experience they are talking about. And I cannot as a historian, I cannot say, but this is real or unreal or imaginative or fantastic or what. But for them, it was obviously this lady experiences something that 100 years before wasn't there in the cosmos experiences. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. While because the history of medicine had the monopoly about since the 19th century to define what we mean by body. What is it?
What is it?
Yes. What is it? While if you go, and therefore it was important to understand that you would have to go historically, go back. You go back and you go back again and back again, and you come. You arrive into ever new landscapes of experiences.
Landscapes of experiences.
Yes, landscapes of experiences,
Great.
fields of experiences. Yes, yes. That before you would have either say either it is a story, or it is an error of nature, or what she's talking about. But then in the search by going back in time, you realize that there is one history, then there's a history of 17th century, then there's a history of 16th century, and so on and so on. And it's ever new.
It's ever new and different.
Ever new and different, and the terms change.
A strong image that we have, it's from you, is like the fetus inside the pregnancy.
The child sits there, yes.
And
the child sits there.
And
the
the
interior
images
of a woman sits there. And there are long disputes among physicians, but also especially among women, if the child sits there and looks here
out,
or looks the other way around, and so on, and how the child sits there. They have hundreds of stories how the child, and also stories that women tell, how they perceive their unborn. Yes.
And then it's so strong. Then the image of the fetus, right?
Yeah,
and then it's this big.
Always we have the same term. This is fetus is Greek. No, embryo. No, embryo is Greek, and fetus is Latin. And we have the term, but what is perceived
Okay.
there as a physicist is very, very different.
Yes,
Because
that's
the
fantastic.
The word is
physician
not
says
this.
there's a fetus, I see a fetus. So then the woman would probably, the woman who becomes pregnant in this moment, says it's impossible. I can't have a fetus. I can't have a child with a very big head and nothing else, just make like this and so on, because this is not what we expect when a woman is pregnant. What the term denotes or names are many different shapes that come forth from a woman's interior, innards. And sometimes it's a child, but you recognize a child. But this, what comes out here with a big head and nothing, just is not really a child. We get rid of it. It's not what it means to be pregnant.
Oof.
Yes, yes,
Oof.
yes. That's history of embryology. What is perceived as coming forth between the legs of a pregnant woman, Cinta,
Cinta.
and that you say, ah, yeah, this is a child. But maybe something comes out, and the midwife thinks something is strange.
Oh yeah,
Not
I
a real
see.
child.
I
It's
see.
not
see.
really a child.
I see.
Yes.
And nowadays we get used to see what is not a child because of the images.
Today but something that comes out between the legs of a woman and has a disproportionate big head is what the midwife expects. But then they expect a child. So you see, this is Elizabeth and Maria. They are real children who say, hey, I'm Johannes.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So,
Exactly.
and Johannes kneels down because Johannes perceives the Jesus in the womb of Maria. Therefore, and it's real a child. How is the perception rooted? The perception where you say, ah, yeah, this is a child that has been waiting to come out for months and months, and now it's there. Oh, it is here. Ah, yeah, it has the nose of Uncle Tobias, and so on and so on. So obviously, but sometimes, no, that's not a real child. Children do have not these big heads and so on and so on. So also the shape of an embryo, or the embryo that is being named in the medical texts has the shape, has a history that you recognize. Ah, yeah, this is really a child. Or you say, or the midwife say, no, that's not really a child. We better get rid of it because it's not.
It's not.
It looks strange. Yeah, maybe what was happening here in the mingling of the flesh.
The mingling of the flesh.
Yes, what was happening here? Yes, and what is the sign that comes out? Ah, yeah, it's of course a huge field to discuss the history of what it means in a period that a woman, several women are perceived as pregnant, that they are going with child. That's certainly not something that is that comes from dictionaries that define.
One can try to find space for perception today, or what we call perception now it's a bit lost, or how Or is it out of the historical?
Now, you raise a very important question: how to preserve, safeguard, or take serious stories that do not fit into the dictionary or scientific definitions. And still, yeah, so that's what you raise. The issue is that emanations of the flesh have, yeah, it is because it has to do with interior perception, and then the perception of the child. What is the woman's perception of that she's going with child, and not going with a dog, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah.
What you could imagine what means pregnancy, and yeah, you would. I mean, the history that I was trying to recover in the history of the unborn was that there are many perceptions or the sense, an interior sense, also the sense that the child to come, who may be already there, but he cannot be visualized, but it's there already, it's interior, and how to unfold the central experiential dimensions that through that then disappear later in history, just disappear. Yeah, just cannot be felt anymore because the field is laid out with other definitions.
And if it is today, we can still perceive, of course, totally different because our surrounding is different, but can we still perceive, have perception, you think?
Yes, certainly. When you look at me, I can see, yes, I have an inkling. Yes, certainly.
So
Yeah,
it's
because we are not walking around like living dictionaries.
Yeah.
That you say, yeah, I have to, what did I perceive? And it was kicking me. Where? There. Yeah, and so on. So,
it's good to not have access to every second.
yes.
Do you think, Barbara, that this was the role of ascesis in Illich, for example? The ascesis in spiritual practices was a way to allow this flesh to be alive and open and vibrating to experience the world.
In the sense in which Ivan was, these terms, when you say was critical, he wasn't critical. He had a distance. He tried for a distance, and he knew that scientific distance, I mean technically verified or descriptions and so on, are something different than the flesh, the living flesh, and that was very important. That was very basic for him. Yeah, and he tried for a long while. He tried to enter into conversations with theologians also, and said they are not interested in the flesh, but this is theology or a belief of the incarnation.
Yes.
So it's very important as a perception of incarnation. And Ivan tried to get to have theologians interested in these stories, but that was in vain.
It was not possible to talk about incarnation in this sense.
No, in this sense, no. no, was not possible, because the natural sciences, or when you look the definition of embryo, and then how an embryo is defined, and in antiquity is defined, and there is this progress of definition, and the keen notions that something is being lost by a discovery that annuls other ways of perception, and that this is a dispute that should be that we should have. That was very important for Ivan, and now he lived, always lived for months in Mexico, and of course their stories would be very different, and he was very acutely aware of the verity, of the truth of other ways of perceiving.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yeah. That was very important that he always went back, and of course he was also writing and talking about the disappearance of worlds that he had known in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on and so on.
I was just wanting to get a smell of the atmosphere of thinking together in Kräftingstrasse. When
Yeah.
Kräftingstrasse becomes a place where you are
Yes.
cooking ideas together.
Yes.
How that happened? How Kräftingstrasse happened?
Yeah, Ivan was always open to converse and study together with others. That was a place for study and discussion and writing together and writing alone, and he rejoiced in that he was always doing. And wherever he went, he started, he did it. Yes, yes. When I think sometimes when we hear an academic talking, and then he said, I finished with this project and I went into the next, and now I started with this, and so on and so on. And with Ivan it was very different, because he was all the time studying, and it wasn't clear where he would end up. Yeah, it was really open. Yeah. Even so, he was very strict in his searching, in his searches.
And you mentioned, just to catch one idea of the fact that when Illich, when Ivan tried to involve and invite theologians to consider that particular aspect of incarnation, that there was no opening, there was no.
None.
Do you think, Barbara, today that there is a moment for some of the ideas of Illich to flourish? Do you feel, because I'm asking that just because now, after Agamben said that the era of the legibility of Illich has arrived, less referring to this idea, but more to the fact that we are experiencing at least the beginning of the questioning of science as the ultimate holder of the truth.
Yes.
We are experiencing a moment in which we are challenging the definitions given only by academia, by science, by institutions. Therefore, do you think that there is we are living a moment in which there is room for Illich again? This is
that is not an issue that someone can decide on, but it's a question of hope, what you raise, and open conversations, and suddenly that there is, look what's happening. But where you can think fresh, new, old and new at the same time. The Craftingstrasse was a space or place, you would rather say, not space, place for thinking together. Yeah, thinking together. Yeah, that was thinking together. And thinking together meant speaking. Speaking together also. Yeah. But you know, you have read Ivan more carefully than I did.
No, I haven't.
But,
I haven't, Barbara.
but that
I haven't. It's just a feeling that your generation has a perception of things that are more tuned. I don't want to say tuned, more
yes.
maybe more sensitive, and that's why I asked, because and your answer is, it's not an answer, but your participation in this questioning it's wonderful, because it's hope. We the idea that there is hope for something to flourish and to keep the conversation alive, and it's
And reading, explaining, discussing, reading again, and so on. And so on. Take it serious. What you want to study. Yeah. Yeah. And these issues about the body.
yes,
It's a,
yes.
it's a topic that doesn't exist. The body doesn't exist at all.
The body
Shall I open your trousers, or
Please.
where is your body, my dear? Come on, that must be a joke. What means the body? The body.
Yes.
I have a body. I don't have a body. Come on. But what I think is important in Ivan's pilgrimage or walking along, is that this earnestness, the seriousness to continue and struggle for the questions he wanted to raise, not to answer, but to raise.
But to raise.
Yes, questions he wanted to raise. Yeah. Ivan, because so unobtrusive at the same time, and so clear. But I couldn't read his texts. I thought it was terrible. What he write, terrible. No.
Fantastic.
No. Thought no. It doesn't speak to me at all. Only that it authoritatively speaks, but not to me.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Barbara, it's a gift to know you. Thank you.
Oh no.
Yes.
It is.
No.
Not because of it. It's like it's beautiful. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Really, really, Barbara.
Yes, so much.
But you will encounter. But was other people say yes, as many? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
You are
Okay,
most
Barbara.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Barbara.
Thank you very much.
Yes.